Okay, so we're here. Sorry we're a little bit late. We were working on some technical things, some of which we fixed and some of which we did not, but that's okay. Been a fun week. We're into, at least where I am, we're into summer break. So I think there's one or two schools I know of that still have graduation from the high school level next week. And then we're going to be into what I remember summer being a lot longer than it seems like for kids, at least in our district these days, because they'll be back in school at the end of July. Where I grew up, I would be out of school mid to late June, and then we'd be back after Labor Day. I think that's changed a lot. Well, that will date me anyway. But anyway, and here because of the heat, you might as well be in school in August because it's too hot to be outside. So I
Yeah.
think that has a
The
bearing on it.
the school district here, the public schools are mandated to start after Labor Day, mostly for workforce. It's just such a tourism state. So our kids are typically out somewhere. I mean, it's rare that they're there until mid June, but then they're not allowed to start until whatever it is, September 2nd or 3rd, or maybe even the 1st, depends on when. Well, no, I guess Labor Day doesn't ever fall in August, so it uh, must be the 2nd is the earliest they can start.
Yeah. Press that little kill button. I don't like to have people listening to my typing in the background.
It's funny.
So but anyway, what's interesting in your world, and we can get right into our topic. And today
Yeah.
we'll be basically. So for those of you who are watching, BJ's got a bunch of questions. I have kind of the general idea about where we're going to go, but we're just going to go, and we'd love it if you have some comments or questions on what we are talking about for you to let us know. I see I'm pixelating when I'm moving, which means things are slow on my end a little bit. So, well, if
Oh,
you,
you're good here.
yeah, oh, good. Okay, maybe it's just on my end. So that's
Yeah.
good. So anyway,
Yeah.
jump right
One
in.
of the interesting things that happened, that you asked about my week. I play with a small but growing group of adults, and we have most of us are pretty enthusiastic about playing doubles at the beach, so we go Saturday mornings. I take a net. Our city is right on Lake Michigan, and we do have pretty nice beaches, and there are some court setups that are okay but not ideal. So I just take a net. One of the Park and Sun. There's a potential sponsor.
Yeah, there you
um,
go.
one of the I have four nets. I just grab one of those, and I've got it rigged up so that I can set it up in the sand pretty quickly. It takes me not even 10 minutes to set up a net, and I have two that are set up. I'm looking forward to the day where we can set up two or maybe as many as four nets. For some just drop in open doubles play. But yesterday was unique. We had 8 people, seven adults and then a kid who's just starting. And he's maybe 13, 12, 13, but it wasn't awful. I mean, he could get the ball up in the air. So we have 8 of us, and I only had one net set up. So I introduced to this group of adults speedball. None of them had ever played it, and it was mostly just so that we could get everybody in on the one net. And so I asked them, hey, I've got this game. Um, it's what most it's probably the biggest addition to drills that has happened, I think, in the last 5-7 years, is this concept of speedball. Which, if people don't know, a classic speedball game is two teams on one side, two teams on the other. When a team loses a point, a single point, they immediately go off, and the team that's on their side serves to the team that just won a point, and you just go back and forth. go back and forth that way. It's super easy to understand once you've played it a little bit. We played yesterday for a score, and it's really simple to do that. Anytime you score a point, you just simply call out how many points you have, and it was we had a great time. The interesting part of it wasn't the speedball itself. I asked everybody if they wanted to give this a shot, and since we never play triples or quads, it's always doubles. I said I've got this doubles game that all 8 of us can play at once, and I said it's called Speedball. Has anybody played it? No, nobody's played it. I'm like, okay. So I said, just listen to the explanation for a second, and then we'll start. So I set up the teams, and I said, okay, UT teams go to the other side, and immediately the coaches on the court start telling everybody where to go. You go over here and go over here, and we're going to serve. This side always is going to serve. Put all the balls over here and put it. And I'm listening to all these directions. I'm like, you guys, just wait a second. There are going to be 2 teams over here and 2 teams over there. And then one of the people who's a coach just wasn't getting it. Like, how's this gonna work? Like, hold on. If you just wait a second, I'll explain. And I put the 2 teams out, and they had this, king of the court or champion's court idea in their heads, and they were really struggling to get beyond that. That one side was the winning side. And it was funny because it reminded me, I don't know if you had this experience, Steve, but when Cap was running, at Cap 3, we had to design a couple of drills and take those drills to the gym and teach them to the coaches, and then get critiqued by the coaches and the cadre. The same thing happened there over and over to people, where you've got 30 coaches in the room. There's a person who is the coach who's running the drill, and all the other coaches are talking about, you should do this or go there, and if you go here, it'll be easier, and come on. And it just, it's amazing how much as coaches that we overcoach. And especially in that setting where we're supposed to be the learner.
It's a fundamental thing I'm working through right now, which is, as coaches, we want to be right. And I won't say we want to be the be all and the end all, but we like being right. We like thinking of ourselves as smarter than the other guy, or needing to be smarter than the other guy. And, I'm in the process of looking at, maybe some girls' coaching opportunities in the fall, because I don't do anything in the fall right now. And you go into an interview, and you start in with the how am I going to, who am I being compared to? And at the end of the day, I'm 80% there of, this is what I do. Here's how I think about the game. Might be right for you, might not be right for you. I got a question in an interview about, hey, we've got an existing JV coach. It'd be great if that person... And I said, look, we need to talk. And what I learned from my assistant on the boys' side this year was it's important to appreciate what the other person brings to the table and use it. And we had a fair amount of, I won't say conflict, but I'm sure there are things he thought I was doing that I could be better. And I generally approached it for almost everything with, okay, show me, let's do something else. Now, was I great? No, I had 1 or 2 times when it wasn't quite because I said so, but it was close. It was one of those, okay, it's time for me to say, here's what we're going to do. But he was great about dealing with that when the couple of times it happened. And I was always trying to catch myself when I was overdoing it. And when I'm like, wait a minute, did you do that because you wanted to get better, or did you do that because you wanted to be right? And it's coaches are like that. So I think that it's tough to kind of go, okay, wait a minute, let's back off. And in your case, if I were doing it, I'm going to be a coach here for a second. If I were doing it, I'd say, kings. Yes. Said, imagine kings where you don't switch sides. The losing team comes off, and the losing team serves because they are used to the winning team serves. That's what this is. You stay on the same side, and the losing team serves. Try it for a while. Then you got to do it. And at least for me, when I'm doing with the boys, I just let them do it, and I'll correct a little bit and let them muck around with it.
The only other sort of revelation, and I remember this from Cap as well. When you're a player in a drill, it's really important to understand the rules of the drill, because it's one of those things about contrived drills. I mean, speedball is doubles. It's very game-like. It's as close to game-like as you can really get, with those couple of exceptions. Just the odd rules of the losing team is going to serve, and when you lose, you run off right away. So there are a couple little adaptations or constraints that you do have. And there were times, despite the fact that I've run speedball a couple of 100 times, there were times as a player in the drill where I found myself standing and not grabbing a ball to serve when I'm off the court, or calling I'm gonna serve, and I call my score, which wasn't the rule. The rule was you call your score when you serve, or when you win the point. Right after the point, you call your score. So it was the reminder there is, it's hard, especially as an adult that's been playing for 30 odd years. It was hard to get into a drill that I knew very well. Imagine teaching that drill to a group of players that have never played it before, and how hard it must be for them.
Yeah, and I think that storytelling helps too. You just saying that. Now, I've been doing speedball for at least 10 years. I've never scored it. So I'm sitting here going, yeah, why not? Why not get the guys to take a little more pride in it? It'll make it a little bit more, less sloppy. And we're running open gyms now, and the boys just pretty much play speedball 80% of the time. Or actually, they're playing Kings right now, but I'd like to get them to play speedball. We just didn't have enough the last couple of open gyms. But what we do is, one, scorekeeping I'm adding. Second is, I think we do speedball 3s and 4s, and when we go to 4, we put the 2 setters out there and run it that way. So the idea being, when we get to 3s, now they've got to manage the gaps, which is what they're going to have to do. And again, this is setting them up for indoor. For beach 2s, that would be counterproductive. But for indoor 6s, it's very helpful for them to receive serve and have to have that point communication of who's got what gap, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a great drill for if you've got 2 setters, if you can have all-time setters and then rotate in groups of 3, so that's 4-on-4. That's a great offense development tool, because you can, one person has to make a dig, the other 2 can run offense, with the setter. So I think that's a big adaptation that a lot of people don't use. There's, if you have an odd number of teams, like if you have only 3 teams, or if you have 5 teams, there's some things that you can do to get that 5th team in without having them stuck on one side. And it almost actually runs better with 5 teams. When you lose, if you have 5 teams, you stand on the pole. And then when another team loses, you go to that side, whichever side it is, you go to the side they came from, and then you're second in line. So then, if you think about it, all the teams can cycle, rather than just playing the same 2 teams every time.
Yeah, and that's the difference in our indoor game, is we wind up not having teams. It's random assignment running through. So they'd be keeping individual scores as opposed to team scores. But yeah, I think again that gets into the variation. In one of the interviews this week, I was asked, what's a practice look like? I said, well, I've got about 5 drills. We had this conversation last week, so we got about 5 drills. And here's what it would look like, and the difference would be, scoring those drills if we score. And in the beginning part, these schools I've been talking to have, interestingly enough, they're small schools, but they also have either K through 12 or 6 through 12. And, in those situations, they're like, hey, do you want to coach junior high as well? Or, at least you need to be talking to the guys who are doing junior high. And I was like, do you play the boys in junior high at all? And they're like, well, no. I said, could I do something with the boys in junior high? Yeah, probably. Like, okay, I like that thought already, because in my world, I don't have any feeding into. It's a lot of work to go to the feeding schools, and a little different thing here. You can go to any high school you want in Arizona. So we get kids from 20 miles away, which is tough for them to make practices, but they can go to any school they want. Some have admission requirements, but basically charter schools, all those things are, it's open range here, which kind of Western, I guess. But yeah, it's not what you, I think, are used to, and I was definitely used to in Chicago. You went to your school district high school. That was the deal. And if you were on the wrong side of the street, you didn't go to the school, you went to the school wherever that boundary was. Not so here. So that's been different. We can make it work, but it's, how do you build your pipeline is another story here too. You got to be a little more creative.
There were 2 scoring adaptations that work well. We talked about last week with Mark Curlin. One is you can only score a point on a kill, block, or ace.
Mm-hmm.
So opponent errors. A little step back. That's really hard.
Yeah.
A little step back from that is that there are no points for missed serves. So that it doesn't necessarily make you earn them as much, but because you can, a team could have a hitting error, and you could get a point that way. But at least you're not getting that free point for doing nothing. I think so.
Yeah, I score it with with relatively new players, or which a lot of my players are. You have to score on an overhand swing. As a starting point. And then after a little bit, you go, okay, now you got to be off the ground. So you have to have jumped. And you get everything from the standing jump and swing when you do that, but at least they start thinking about jumping and making contact with the ball in the air. But those things can, as you say, you can get as creative as you want with what you allow to score. Right. And we haven't even talked big point, little point yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get into the swamp if we start talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to handle Omar's question here first before we get into our topic?
Yeah, let's put it up here. Let's put it up and make it a little more legible here. Oh man.
For people that are listening only, hey coach, great to hear you're providing playing opportunities for athletes. How many show up to your open gym sessions? Also, do you get paid for that time as a coach? I'll tell my side first. We, at the high school that I was at, we had everything from one person to, as the season got closer, we were getting, 10, 12, 14 players. They tend to wait. In Wisconsin, we could not provide incentive to come to open gym. It was against the rules, so I followed that pretty closely. We didn't set up leagues or hand out T-shirts. It was all against the rules. It was just whoever came could come play, and coaches weren't really even supposed to split up teams. We were just supposed to open the doors and watch. In Wisconsin, typically the contract is you get X amount of dollars for getting through the season. We've calculated it out, right? It's about $1 an hour or $2 an hour or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of the summer stuff, not every coach does open gym during the summer. I have heard of some places though that run open gym through their recreation department. So in the city that I live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, our recreation department could run an open gym, and then I could get paid as that supervisor of that open gym. And I know that that used to happen, not with a coach, but there was a guy in our community that just enjoyed it. And we had, there were some days where we had 3 courts, 6-on-6, and teams waiting out. So it got popular for a while, which was a lot of fun to go to. I know, Steve, how about you?
Well, I'll preface it by saying I've been concentrated on the boys' side. And in Arizona, boys volleyball starts in ninth grade. So there's no kind of incentive. If I were doing the girls' side, girls start in seventh grade typically, and maybe a little bit earlier depending on if, private schools and Catholic schools and things like that. But that's kind of the starting point. When I started 4 years ago, I had 13 guys that, I literally came in just before the season started. The coach had to leave. I came in. I had 13 guys. We did what we did. So we had our season. Then I said, I'm going to do open gyms all, in the summertime. So I did open gyms as much as I could get gym time. And I wasn't really good at understanding what gym time I could get. Turns out I could have gotten more, but I didn't realize it. So the gym time I got, I would be there. I was telling the guys the other day, I would be here alone. For, I generally speaking would say I have 2 hours of gym time for open gym, and if nobody was there in 45 minutes, I went home. And that happened a lot. And then I would get 3 or 4 kids, and I had a core of about 5 kids who started showing up. And then it opened gym during school. The basketball coach whispered in my ear and said, "Hey, early morning kind of works." So I would we practiced from 6:15 a.m. to 7:50. Actually, 6 a.m. to 7:15 a.m., which I loved getting up for 6 a.m. gym time, but that's all we could get. And again, those kind of the same 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys occasionally, but usually it was 3 or 4 showed up, and we just worked on skills. We'd play some doubles. We'd do what we could do, and that really helped. Now, after 4 years, we went through COVID that, really bastardized everything. But this year we had a varsity and a JV boys team. And now at open gyms, I'm getting 11, 12. I'll probably max out with 16, 17 kids in the gym. And we're running speedball 1 net next week. When we get into it a little more, we'll probably run 2 or 3 nets. And it's just different. The pay side, Omar, sorry. No pay. Pay during the season. And frankly, the district pays pretty well. I mean, on the club side, for the, 8 or 9 weeks that you do a season, maybe 10 weeks you do a season, I would make, as a head coach in our district, probably more than I would have made in a complete club season. Now you're doing less because you're practicing every day. But what I like about it is I'm doing very little on the weekends. You might have 1 or 2 tournaments that have a Saturday. Nothing in Arizona, nothing's allowed on Sundays. Whereas in club, you have a lot of weekends committed, even though you only have a couple nights a week. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess. But and then it's on you for the rest of the season. I basically volunteer a lot of my time. So, and I mean a lot of my time. And I'm happy to do it because I love the sport. I want to grow it. I'm not in it to make a living, for sure. As a teacher, if you were a teacher and you got a little extra income from it, it can be a nice little boost if you wind up even doing JV coaching where there's less of the administrative burden. But you can and maybe even less of the open gyms sort of thing. Now, the other thing you can do, and a lot of people do, is camps. So they'll do, I was looking at one recently where it's like this person's doing $50 a week ahead and, for a 1-week camp. Trying to get younger players involved. So she was running this camp in the gym facility at her high school that she had access to, and you know, it was a great way to promote the sport and to make a little bit of money. In my district, the amount of paperwork I have to do to go to do a for pay sort of thing, and the difficulty in getting advertising approved and all of that stuff, I'm like, nah, I'm just going to open the gym, get the word out with the boys, and that way I don't have to worry about, you know, getting all kinds of approvals. It's just one simple, you know, block of gym time. So sorry, that's a long answer, but that's kind of what I've gone through.
I'll probably get hate mail for this, but I don't love the camp setting. Um, I know colleges rely on it for their slush funds. I just don't think that, you know, 5-6 hours a day in a gym is a great learning experience. So what I've done, it's just too it's like cramming for a test. Um, I just I think it's too much. What I've done based on the model of open gym that I like, if I go back to high school, I would work hard to have open gyms during the summer because we can do it. We wouldn't be in the gym. We'd go out, play doubles, or you know, either on the grass or the sand. You know, one night of grass, one morning or afternoon of doubles at the beach, because we have the facilities. It's easy, and the weather is great during the summer. You know, wouldn't be the same for you, Steve, during the summer, but
Right.
you know, have to be early morning or late at night. But based on that, I mean, I think players can get as much out of going to that style of open gym or open play than a 40-hour a week camp. So what we've done now, I get asked by some local high schools. I'm doing 2 of them this year to do camps. We go. We start at 3 o'clock. Have the younger kids from 3 to 5, the older kids from 6 to 8 each day. It lowers the cost a little bit for the players because they're not getting charged a full day's rate. And then in that in between time, the 5 to 6, I'll show video, we talk about different strategy, ways to improve uh, some of these types of topics that we're talking about on this podcast, and then just getting video out about learning and trying to ease. Uh, there's a lot of anxiety that players have about tryouts or failure or you know, teammates, and we work on starting some of those discussions and giving them some tools in that in between hour. So I have a video screen, one of these huge like backyard video screens that we set up in the school, and the kids eat. You know, the younger kids can hang out and eat their dinner and then leave, while the older kids come early, you know, an hour before camp, have dinner from 5 to 6, and then they can talk. And I usually, you know, I don't put them through a whole class, but maybe 40 minutes, and get them talking, and then give them some time. And a lot of times that ends up being open gym at the end, so that they can just go and have their time to experiment. But I think I'm finding in the high schools so far that I've done that with are finding they like that format a little bit better. I
Yeah.
think it's healthier also. We're not overdoing it at a time where they're maybe not 100% ready to play a ton of volleyball. So I think that shorter time frame allows them to come in, play a little bit, go home, think about it. You know, that between session learning that happens, and then hit them, you know, the next day for 2 hours, and then probably just 4 days. We skip the Fridays because
Yeah.
you know, nobody wants to be at the gym on Friday night. So
Well, you know,
yeah, that's we've got a lot of success with that. Go ahead.
and that's essentially, and to make the point for Omar and others, that's the camp I was talking about is set up just that way. Young, you know, but broken down by age group, or and they include. There was a little bit of overlap, which I thought was interesting, where they said, okay, ninth graders who are just starting out come with the younger kids, ninth graders who've been playing before come with the older kids, to kind of give a split. And the other thing that comes to mind with that, and again, you'd have to, depending on your school district and rules and all that, one thing that comes to mind is finding a way for the older kids to interact and maybe coach the younger kids. But you will get into, if they do any of that, you got to pay them. In most districts, it's like, you can't. Every district's a little different about what they'll allow to volunteer. In my district, if I have a kid do anything to organize, I've got to pay them, which is fine. I mean, I think it'd be a great way for them to make a couple extra bucks, but you got to work that into your whole structure a little bit. And typically they have I think we have to pay them $15 an hour or something like that. And it's like, okay, you can make that work. And Omar, you may find that for open gyms, there's facilities requests you need to do. In my case, for the first time this year, my athletic department really did a nice job of they've just been kind of working up to this. They set up a schedule for here's the gym time through the summer and made sure every sport had some time. Now, my time's like the lowest priority because I'm just coming off my season, but I've got, I'm like, fine, we'll do 6 to 8. No problem. My guys will come in. And so it's really, we're doing a better job. And so it's nice to see that progress made.
Yeah, and at least in Wisconsin, I don't know how it is in every state, but public park helps us a lot. If it's a public facility, there's, so long as you're not doing something that's negligent, you're protected from being sued. Either the park, if somebody were to hurt themselves, it's not an organized session. It's just open gym. So it comes under the rules of using the park on your own, up to you. But I don't know. Do you have anything else about that, Steve, or do you want to kind of get into our topic here?
Yeah, let's jump into that.
Okay. One of these, I've been listening to a lot of George Carlin lately, and he doesn't have small complaints. He has giant bleeping, what does he call it? Things that make him angry. This isn't either one of those, but I had that in mind. We hear the idea of the team comes first, or there's no I in team, or that's sort of thinking, or the I guess they're phrases that coaches use, or we talk about teams having to come before individuals. And I wanted to poke around that idea a little bit. I've had this discussion with a couple of other people, and I think that idea or that sentiment needs a relook. Some of it comes through the COVID bit that we've gone through and watching athletes struggle. But I think I had the ideas about this in the past, and it's sort of like when I hear some of those phrases, it's a little bit like chalk on nails on a chalkboard. It in my mind, and I'll take your opinion on this. If a player is less than perfect, or is less than healthy, or has something else that's on their mind, do they really need to set that aside? Or do they need to make sure that they're coming to practice or matches in a healthy state? Would it be better to take care of your health first and come as a healthy person so that you can contribute to the team?
Yeah. It's interesting because a couple of the places I've interviewed have said, "Oh, check our policies out," and kind of what I was used to when my son was playing. Their policies are things like if you're absent the day of a match, or if you miss practice the day before a match, you're not allowed to play, or you have to sit out a set or whatever. But very strict attendance and commitment rules, and I understand those, and in their environment, they may work. And I say that because having been North Shore, Chicago affluent neighborhood kind of thing, there's more likelihood that those folks can adhere to those kinds of things. Now, that I say likelihood because they have, there's problems everywhere. Having gone through the pandemic, having worked at a Title I school for a number of years now, I have a different perspective on that, and that is, every kid's different. I was talking with our soccer coach, and he said, "Look, when I'm at soccer practice, I have 4 or 5 or 6 siblings on the sideline because their brothers had to bring them because they have to watch them this afternoon." And or I have, I have a guy who's, hey, I'm in the musical. I'm the drummer in the pit band. I've got to be there for the first month of the season. After that, I have a job that and especially towards the end of the season, going into the summer, I have all kinds of guys who are in. Hey, coach, I've got a job interview this afternoon. What am I going to say? Oh no, you got to be at practice. My attitude about that with them is, look, you got to do what you got to do. Family comes first. Academics is ahead of sport, and we're third, fourth, fifth on the list. I get it. I want you to be dedicated to your teammates. Just understand that anytime you can't be here, you lose that opportunity to get better and be more valuable as a teammate, but you also have to live your life. And a couple of these schools I'm going to, my guess is my hands will be tied. I won't be able to say that in some circumstances. And you kind of have to come to grips with that. If it's the norm at that school, they probably have well planned for it. That's the ones where they go, oh, my family's doing thus and so, spur of the moment. You go, well, we were kind of in your plans, weren't we? Those are the kinds that get, at least annoy me. I might have to deal with. But I think, coaches too, we need to keep mentally positive. So if we're going through, I had, a situation where I knew a coach who was frustrated with his working situation, and over time that made it more difficult to coach, and they were looking forward to almost to that relief of going on to the next thing. I think, will that take away from the team he was coaching? Yes, because they're now going to have to get used to another coach. It's not super team-like. And, I could see some of his boys going, you're abandoning us. But at the end of the day, if that coaching situation isn't ideal, at some point you have to make a decision it's kind of coach self-care, and it's player self-care too. I've had players come to me and it's like, I don't want to play. My parents are making me do this. I don't want to play, or other things, whatever it is. I'm like, look, you need to do what's good for you. I will miss you as a player, but you've got to do what's right for you, because, and that's when parents in club were like, we're going to go to another club. I'm like, if that's what you need, if you're on my, you don't play as much. Let's say you're on a ones team, which I hadn't coached a lot of ones teams. But if you're on a ones team and you're not getting playing time, and you can go play for another club's one team and get playing time, go. If it's right for you, I'll miss you, but I want you to be happy.
Yeah, I think especially as I look at college or professional coaches, that the team comes first. It's hypocritical, because if you're say you're at a Division III school and you get the opportunity to go to a Division I school, if the team truly came first, you would not leave. You would stay. So I think you're right to mention the coaches as well as the players. It's in the same sense, if the team came first, say you had an exam at 8 o'clock in the morning and you just didn't, you weren't yet prepared the night before, yet there's volleyball practice. Well, the obvious thing to me is that you stay home and you study. If it were true that the team came first, you would not allow that. Mm-hmm. You would say to the player, well, looks like you're going to get a C or worse on that test. And I think it's, as coaches, particularly middle school, high school, or club situation, where coaches are not managing their players' time as much. It's I think it's much better for that player to go get, go help themselves get prepared. And then maybe you got to talk about time management or
Yeah.
how to do some of this thing.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me too is I've come to a much better understanding of there are personality types that are great at time management. Those are your players who, you're at a club tournament and they've got their books with them and they're going through all of that stuff. Some of that is learned. Some of that is innate. And I say that having studied this for a while and understanding how it works. And there are some players who are going to be last minute every time, but they bring other things, to the table. They're the ones who see something a little different in the game and say, "Hey, coach, could we try this?" I belong to a group. It's called the Association for Managers of Innovation, and when we start our meetings, when we get together, either virtually or physically, which have been virtual for quite some time now. The first exercise is, what are the gifts in the room? And we go around and get to know each other and figure out what we all bring to the table. And it's different for everybody. And with my teams, I try to understand the gifts that they bring. I have a setter who's very quiet, but he brings a steadiness to it. He's consistent. He's been dedicated to the program to a point. He's not dedicated in the off season. I hardly ever see him at open gym, which I go, it's a shame because I think we as a team could get better, but he's got academics. He's got, other things that he does. He's got family things. We have a Friday evening anything, and he's like, I have a family dinner. And his family's very tight-knit, and they have Friday dinner as an important thing in his family. I'm like, okay, got it. It's one of those. Now, if I had a Friday night tournament, yeah, he'd be there, but that'd be about the extent of it. I can either accept that and appreciate why it happens and coach around it, or I can be dogmatic. I choose the former, but not every coach will.
It makes me want to ask the question: why does somebody join a team? Why does a person join a team? It's, in my mind, they're coming as an individual, right?
Yeah.
It's somewhat about personal satisfaction. You can look at, players want to have some affiliation. They want to be a part of a group, right? They want some influence over that group. And then competence is another, they want a group that has some level of competence together. But even getting those things out of it, those are individual things that you get. Obviously, we need all the teammates in order to have a team. We can't have a team without teammates. But I think each one of those teammates is looking for something, varying levels of those concepts, or maybe something else. But we all bring our individual needs for joining a team when we join.
Yeah, I think for me, there is a certain level of management of self that's needed as being a part of a team sport. A selfish player is not one I'll go, well, they're just selfish. No, I as a coach, that doesn't work well for me. If they're not a positive force, they at least have to be a neutral force. If they're a negative force, then I have to coach around that, or I have to cut that player loose. And yes, to me, it's important to understand where they're coming from and to make them a better teammate, hopefully a better person as a result of that. But, at high school, at least at my level, you have to figure that some of them are there to be competitive. Some of them are there to be great at the sport. And some of them are there just to have fun. Some of them want to belong to a team and be part of an organization and be accepted by others. And there's all levels of that. And I tell the story probably too often. I mean, I played 2 years of high school soccer. And I played 20 minutes as a junior. I played 0 minutes as a senior. Would I do it over again? Was I disappointed? Yeah, I was disappointed I didn't get on the pitch. But I wanted to be on the team and learn the game and be around guys I liked. And, then I went and played at pretty high level intramurals in college, and then I played men's club when I got out of school. So, I'm, occasionally I'll be out with my boys and I'll do something that it has a soccer skill in it and go, coach has skills. I'm like, well, not a lot, but yeah. And it made me a better person. Now, do I expect that amount of sacrifice from every one of my players? No, I know players who will play zero time might leave the organization. So I try not to make that happen. Having gone through that, but I had a senior this year who came in, hadn't played before, just started as a senior, had played some ball, but his skills were not great when he started, but he had played enough that his passing skills were pretty decent in that. And we got him in matches that were either very difficult or more, against opponents that we were handling, and got him in on senior night. And, but at the end, when we were in the playoffs, I had to turn to him and say, look, I appreciate you being patient, because you're not going to, it's not likely you're going to get on the court. And he was fine. I won't say he was fine with that, but he understood. And he was a good teammate, and he was positive there for the boys, and that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think the way I think about volleyball and sport in general is we have some of these types of ideas or sayings. The team comes first is the one we're discussing today. What's the alternative as you start to talk about the flexibility that you have as a coach, or maybe what your team culture is that allows for a player to miss, or a player to have some self-care before they bring to the team? How do we make that statement better? To me, it feels like you have to figure out a way to contribute to a team. If you want to be a part of the team, if you want to get something out of it, you've got to figure out what the team can get from you. Yet you can also give only what you have, or only what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something about you need to consistently give something in order to be, like you said, the positive force. If it's a negative force, the culture has got to step up and take care of that. But how do we make a shorter phrase that replaces the team comes first?
Well, I don't know that we come up with a short phrase, although a couple things come to mind. One is one of the things, and I don't follow the high level. It's funny, I get talking with you guys, and you guys know every college team and every program, and I'm like, I don't follow that. I just I just work the sport. But one of the things that I was struck by this year was when they were interviewing Annie Drews after she came off the bench to play opposite and play incredibly well. And the lesson I'm trying to work on with my teams is Karch sat down with us, and we talked about roles. We asked him, we wanted to know what our roles are so that we can do them as well as we can. And my role was to bring energy off the bench. And she accepted that role. And I think that's doing a better, I don't do a good enough job there. So I know that's something I need to work on. But that for me was a good learning about how to set a team up well. And it's something that I'm trying to add to my coaching.
Our satisfaction level went up quite a bit as on the high school teams that I coached once we started doing something very similar to that, which was, once a player came onto the team for the first time, I laid out what I thought was going to be possible for them, whether they were freshmen coming to the varsity, mostly coach varsity. And I would say to them, look, here's kind of what I see for you. Might be a junior where you're on the fence of, boy, you may never play because the kids behind you, the sophomores and freshmen, are already better. So they're going to be joining this team. If they're not already here, they're going to be joining in the near future. So you may not play. And I had some kids that reacted to that in a variety of ways. One player said, yeah, I just want to be on this team. I don't care if I never play. I'm going to come to practice and enjoy it. I like these people. This is what I want to do. it helped that we were pretty successful as a team. So we had players that were willing to make that kind of sacrifice. But I think what Karch is doing there, it's not just outlining the role. It's outlining the role so that the player can decide, is this for me or
Mm-hmm.
not? And
Yeah.
I think I think what he's doing there is, and maybe this is where some of this is coming from, he is individualizing it for people. Because
Yes.
if he goes to Annie Drews and he says, hey, look, you're going to ride the Pines, and maybe if somebody breaks a leg, you're going to get in. And if she looks at that and says, well, that's not for me. I'm not putting in the 4 years of sweat to do that. Um, it can't always be that cut and dry. We can't predict the future. You never
Right.
know how much better or worse a player is going to get, because we're either getting better or worse most of the time, right? Um, so it's somewhat of a guess, but I think that's what coaches have to be good at to help a player figure out, what is it that you want from this team? If a player's not getting what they want, and to get us back on topic, if a player's not getting what they want out of a team, I don't know that it's the right place for them. I think the team can help a player maybe figure out that, okay, you wanted more, but it's not available. But I think if a player comes in and is just not right for them, or if they can't get out of this team thing what they want, not what they wanted originally, but what they want today, being on the team, they've got to reevaluate. I think, again,
Yeah.
it's what you bring as an individual.
It's kind of a combination. You can accomplish it through roles, and you can accomplish it through rules. And in the past, we've accomplished it through rules. It's like if you do not do this, you are not able to play. Period. End of story. Black and white. There's lots of coaches out there who are black and white with their teams, and you know what? They can be very successful, and their teams can be very successful, and their players can get tremendous benefit from that, because in a lot of cases and places in your life, there's going to be rules-based stuff. At the other end of the spectrum can be a roles-based, where you modify things based on the need of that player. In either one of those cases, the player can make a choice if they know what the environment is. It's where they don't know what the environment is, or where the environment shifts a lot, that can be more of a problem. And that's something I have to work on as a coach, is to be clearer and communicate well, which is always a challenge as a coach and as a player. It annoys the heck out of me when somebody doesn't show up for practice and doesn't at least ping me and group me and say, hey, I'm not going to be at practice today because of whatever. And, are some of the excuses probably a bit lame? Yeah. And so you kind of have to deal with that, and occasionally call somebody on it. So, for me, for example, next year I'm changing my rules going in. It's at least in my boys program, we've allowed players with failing grades to practice, and most programs do some version of that. But it got so bad this year that I have a player who I know loves practice, values practice, and I know others do as well. I'm just going to say, look, guys, if you have an F, go work. Get your grades up. If you get your teacher to come back to me and send me a note, even though it's not the official way we clear you, if you get something from your teacher that says you no longer have an F, you're right back in. But when you got a player who's got 4 and 5 Fs, you can't let them in the gym. At least, let's say, I will not speak for others. I need to stop letting him in the gym to try to provide some level of motivation to get there. And when I hear the reasoning why he's struggling, I'm like, I don't get it. You're going to have to figure out something. And hopefully he'll get some help and get that done.
Yeah, I think that too is an individualized approach
Yeah.
to a player. I think that's, you're just looking at helping the individual. And I'm no psychology expert, but watching players struggle through the pandemic, there was a lot more self-care that was needed. And as you
Yeah.
said, everybody's different. Get yourself, uh, get, will help you get the help you need, or will point you in some directions, but let's get you in the right state of mind so that you can contribute. That the the Marv Dunphy consistency outlook. At least can you give us the baseline? Here's what you need to give us every day. If you can give us more, great. But this is what we need from you. And if you can't give this, then we have to reevaluate. Where you stand on the team. I don't know. I think we have to make that a little bit more catchy somehow. That idea.
Well, I thought we'd be short this week, and that never happens. But
No.
I would invite coaches who either listen to this on the podcast or to who watch this to give us your thoughts. There may be things we learn from. I've learned from every coach I work with, inexperienced coaches who are just getting started, and they observe some things that I miss. To Kessels and Mike Hewlett and any number of really great coaches, Doug Beal. It just helps to listen to folks who've been there and try to make this intermediate coaching that we do at club and school levels a better experience.
Yeah, I agree. If they're not getting what they want, I think we as coaches are not going to get what we want from them.
Yeah. Well, look, that's going to wrap it for today. And again, comments. We do have a Talking Volleyball email account. Talking Volleyball. Let me make sure I get that address right, because I don't monitor it a ton, but it's talkingvolleyball@gmail.com. If you've got a comment you want to pass along, generally speaking, the comments section of this we take a look at. I get to see the comments that come in here. The comments on the podcast, not so much. So if you're making a comment on Apple and or Google or Spotify, we may not see it. So shoot us an email with your thoughts, or if you have an idea for an episode, happy to hear it. Otherwise, we're going to go forth and have some fun this week, and we'll see you next week. See you later.